Welcome to part three of my series called um, Renewing the Contract. Uh, and I want to talk some little bits today about things that have happened, things that may continue to happen, um, things that may not continue to happen. Uh, just, just sort of general things. What I sort of try to describe as the things that maybe I can look forward to outside of the usual um, garbage that's sort of thrown at people that, whenever you out there are deciding whether or not you want to renew the contract, um, you probably get a bunch of usual garbage. You have this to live for, you have that to live for, et cetera, et cetera. Well, I'm not going to discuss that at this time. I am going to discuss that at some point. But I think it's important to, for me, discuss the things that are sort of individually affecting me. Uh, and the things that if somebody else was to occupy my position in the world, they would see these certain things as a positive, as a unique positive. I think that's the important thing to make mention of. Yes, there are certain positives that can belong to everybody. Yes, if you really like the taste of peaches, yes, I'm sure everybody would say you should live because you'll never taste a ripe peach again. That's nice. It's not really what I'm talking about. If we're going to get into those, don't get me wrong, but I think it's more important for me right now to get into some of the unique situations that may convince me to renew the contract. So, I have two jobs. I work two jobs, neither of which is particularly fulfilling. I don't have a degree or anything like that. This has already been mentioned. But at one of those jobs, there is a particular person, woman, that I find particularly intriguing, attractive, and it seems like she doesn't outright, reject me, I guess. So there is that. It's this beautiful woman, and technically I'm a not single man. I'm still technically married to a wife that has moved out and wants a divorce. So I mean, like dating is out of the question necessarily. Um, but she's a generally nice person. She seems to give me more rope than I deserve. Uh, it's a phrase that I think of. Um, but she's, so she's a generally nice person, really very pretty, beautiful woman. Um, that if I'm enough of a weasel, I could probably get her to spend more time with me. Um, so, that's a thought. As to, yes, well, look, I'm getting divorced, theoretically. Uh, and don't get me wrong, this, beautiful newcomer, um, is a very nice person from everything I know so far. But I would still rather have my wife back in a heartbeat. I mean, it's not even close. Um, but there is some sort of uh, value in accepting that maybe my wife isn't coming back. So I, use my time to meet bills and as a result make, friends with new people. I don't really have a lot of friends anyway. Um, I can certainly come off as friendly, hey, I'm just a friend who's, I'll take you out for a drink or a movie or whatever. Because, ultimately, um, I don't have any of those sorts of people in my life anyway. So if this particular woman happens to fill that void, just a void of time, my time spent doing something, then you know what? More power to me. Um, so I mean, it's just a person. It's it's not anything that I've manifested into anything else. It's not anything that I probably will be able to manifest into anything else. And I think part of what I need to talk about there is that the way I met my wife was she was interested in me and made that connection happen. I didn't. I mean, I really didn't contribute anything other than I was a warm body, for lack of a better phrase. Uh, so she sort of created our relationship. And I think that's probably a pretty reasonable way of describing how any of my relationships have happened, is that the other person has created them all. And it's kind of a shame, obviously. I mean, it's really a shame. But I think, with this new person, I have a certain opportunity there. So I think that's a mark, a check mark in favor of renewing the contract. Is that I have an opportunity to reach out to another person based on my own desires, my own visuals, what have you, and say, yes, I am going to be the aggressive one. I am going to be the, you know, person who makes things happen. For good or for ill. If I'm rejected, so be it. I mean, I'm a pasty, balding, 30-year-old white guy. You know, I've got neck fat. You know, um, I can't see very well. And you know, I mean, believe me, I know there's enough wrong with me that rejecting my advances wouldn't be. It isn't something I couldn't understand. It's definitely something I can understand. You know, she's obviously younger. I don't say obviously for your sake. I say obviously because it's, you know, I can look at her and see that she is not 35 or even 30. She is, you know, in her early 20s or whatever. So, yes, this is something that all right. I obviously know that I can be rejected. I'm trying to minimize that opportunity. Um, but the point is that I would be the one asking. And that really hasn't been the case for me ever. I mean, it's goofy, in fact. I mean, and I think I don't think that my experience or lack thereof is any different than a lot of people have sort of experienced on their own. You sort of fall into things. You don't really go out there and ask people on a date. Um, you just sort of happen into this or that or the other, and that's kind of how it happened with my wife and I. We just sort of happened into things together. We happened to come across each other. We happened to be compatible. I mean, it was one of those things that, you know, saying, you know, if you condense that the process of dating or process of meeting someone down to a 2-hour movie, it seems really easy. I mean, that's all you spend your time doing. And then there's some funny shit that happens. And then eventually the two people, you know, they find each other. But the reality is you can't condense that down into 2 hours or 2 weeks. It takes a long fucking time. And you get, you know, sometimes you get one shot every 6 months or one shot every year. Despite what everybody else out there tells you. I mean, everybody else out there, they'll say, oh yeah, you just go out to a bar and you just, you know, create some crazy shit and then things happen. Great, great. I love reading fiction too. The reality is you're trying to create a portrait of that represents the best of you, and other people are trying to do the same thing. They're trying to create a portrait that resembles the best of them, and it's like any other art gallery. Okay, you go walking through and say, oh, that's nicely painted. No, that's nicely painted. But you only stop, really, your mind only gets blown by some painting, maybe, once or twice in an art exhibit, if that at all. And maybe you have to go to 40 or 50 art exhibits to find one painting, one, that blows your mind. That says, wow, this is just really, that just appeals to me in some way. And so we're all painting these portraits. We're all trying to show the best of ourselves. We're trying to, use the brightest colors, and we're trying to, make something that stands out to people. And we put it on display. So it's out there, on display. And then, first of all, so some people paint these portraits and they hang them from their own closet. They don't put them out on display because it's too crushing when it gets rejected. When I don't like the brush strokes there. That's crushing. That's just, yeah. So, but eventually, you know what? You want to sell your painting, you're going to have to put it out there for somebody to look at. So eventually you do that. Some people sort of slowly show it, like, maybe you would like this, and there's that painting, and maybe and they block off 98% of it, and they show the 2% that they're most proud of, and then they slowly show more and more. And bear in mind, that painting is not actually you. That painting is just the best part of you that you're trying to represent. But even then, people don't want to show the whole thing. They don't want to even show the whole of the best of themselves. And so, you eventually you hang this gallery up, and people go through, and eventually, you get used to people saying, I didn't like that. That's not reasonable. I didn't like that. I don't want that hanging in my house. When they talk in these nasal voices, and they're just so hoity-toity, and ultimately the art critics are like, the people that you really want approval from. The art critics are like doing anything. Oh, yes. Well, that painting has, no touch, no reason, and whatever. And I think it's an apt simile, analogy, because, I think art critics and artists, high-end artists, are kind of mutually jerking each other off. So, the art critic walks through and he says, oh yes, that's quite hauteur and bullshit. And the artist, with his nose in the air as well, oh yes, well, I hoped you would realize what I painted on the wall there. And so they're sort of mutually jerking each other off. And that's why I think, actors and, models and other, subsets of the beautiful intelligentsia date each other. Not because they're necessarily attracted to one another, but because they're sort of being jerked off by the highest the highest of the high at each other's level, and so they sort of fit together. And then when you realize it doesn't, it all falls apart. Um, but we're all sort of painting these portraits out there of ourselves. We're all putting these paintings, these what are we trying to portray? The absolute best that we can possibly portray out there for other people to look at and judge. And it's a difficult thing across the board. I mean, it is really a difficult thing. And even if you put your portrait out there and it happens to sell for exactly the price that you want it to sell for to a person who's going to cherish it and put it above their fireplace in their house, then you have to do the same thing to them. You have to buy their portrait, put it above your fireplace. And, that's the thing. I mean, that's it. So I see this woman at my job, and she's beautiful and she's wonderful, and I would enjoy spending a lot of time with her, right? But so I can put her picture above my fireplace, but then I have to portray my portrait for her to see if she'll do the same. And Alex, that's a nightmare. I mean, who the fuck thinks that's a reasonable thing to do? So, yes, I mean, there are prospects, assuming I win the lottery and then cure cancer and get a Nobel Prize, and I'm just set for life, I can, hire personal trainers and tanning beds, and looking like Matthew McConaughey. Ultimately, you have to put yourself out there to get rejected. Whether it's right or it's wrong, whether it's proper or not, you have to put yourself out there. So no matter what my personal situation is, it's still gonna suck, because ultimately I'm just, hey, look, I'm a 30-year-old balding fat guy who, divorcee, soon to be, with a cat and an empty house. By the way, do you want to date me? And if they can look all past that, they can, fuck it. Here's this person, and I'm gonna see the value in him. That's still just my portrait. That's still just something that I put up on the wall. I painted with the best of my colors. But ultimately, a portrait that hides all your blemishes isn't the real you. And you still have to have some sort of grander appreciation for all of the flaws. And I'm not one of those stupid ass fucking children. Pay attention. Your flaws are not your value. Okay? Just Your flaws are not your value. My flaws are flaws. They're not the things that endear people to me. This isn't, a movie. My flaws are flaws. They're things that people have to overcome to see the actual value in me. So I put that portrait up. I put that, sign up, and somebody else sees it and recognizes it and wants to buy it out of my art gallery. And great. Now I'm going to come and piss all over it in your house. Do you still want it? It's not something that anybody wants to spring on anybody else at a particular time. But ultimately, we are all flawed individuals. Our flaws aren't what make us unique. Our uniqueness is what makes us unique. But we all do have flaws. We need to see if those are things that each other can overcome. And I don't know. I don't know if not only putting the best of myself out there and then having the best of myself get repeatedly rejected in the hope that somebody sees the best of myself and eventually accepts it, only to have them reject the worst of myself. I don't know if that situation is worth renewing the contract. So yes, I might say, wow, this new relationship, a day from now or a year from now or whatever, it can be great, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be anything. It can just be a carrot on a stick. It can just be something that I'm chasing. Chasing that carrot on the stick. That seems like a goal, but on the other hand, it means that I'm never eating if I never catch the carrot. So my point is just me being out there for people, to just see the best in me, for me to see the best in them. Is even that worth? Is the possibility of that, and even if it does happen, is it still worth renewing the contract? It's a question I can't answer today, but it's something I wanted to throw out there. So this is part 3, renewing the contract. This really has to do with, is a potential relationship worth it? That's a difficult question to answer. Anyway, I'll be back soon with part 4. And at that point, I don't really know what'll occupy my mind. I think what I'm going to address next is whether or not I think, I'm going to present some of the traditional reasons for renewing the contract and see if they actually apply, or see if they're actually valid reasons. So that's it for now. I'll see you soon.